Good morning. I actually was in the garden grabbing some harvest, watering the plants, and drinking my morning coffee and thinking about just the world in general and what's going on with our food industry. And I'm not usually a person to have a sit down chat and rant about things, but I think it's really come to the point where we need to talk because what's going on is absolutely insane. And if you have not started to grow your own garden or produce your own meats and foods, I think now is the most important time to really get into it and do some research and start with something. Start with a kitchen herb garden and slowly learn the ropes and expand more and more. I've talked so much about our journey of homesteading, which we've been doing for the past couple of years. We started off with chickens, which is definitely the gateway into homesteading. We have quail, rabbits, a beautiful garden of luscious amounts of food that we get to eat all summer, spring, fall, and even into the winter because of the way that we package and can our food in order to keep us through the winter. And I know that there's a large movement of people wanting to grow and produce their own food, but it's really important to start doing this now more than ever because what's going on with the food industry. And this is not a light topic. There is probably so much more, and I'm only going to be scratching the surface here today, but it really is upsetting to me the fact that I have a kid and I'm going to be growing a family in this world. It's more important than ever that I'm providing a good future for my kid and I'm able to provide them the right foods. And in the past, I just don't think there was enough education around these ultra processed foods that are in the industry. And we just never knew, there was never a light shined upon it, but there are so many whistleblowers and people finally coming out about how bad these foods really are. And I think it's important to start looking about it and to start talking about it even more and really shed a light on some of these things that are actually very harmful to everyone. It is no surprise that our generation and generations below us are actually, I read a stat the other day saying that the millennials, which I'm a millennial, are going to be one of the shortest generations to live, and our ancestors might actually outlive us in the lifespan that they had because of the diet that we're on, the American diet. But I think this is also worldwide. I don't think it's just affecting our country, and it's more primarily about that ultra processed food diet. Ultra processed food really came out because stores needed to make sure that there was foods that could really withstand that shelf life and live much longer. So think your Twinkie, which can necessarily stay on the shelves for a very long time. There's also a lot of other foods like that. And you may notice that you can get hot dog buns or hamburger buns, and they can outlast homemade sourdough loaves by not just days, hours, but weeks. They are outlasting the shelf life. They almost never get moldy, and sometimes the expiration date, which is way farther than it should be, they're still not molding. You can still use the foods, which is nice because you get to save money and keep your food for longer and you don't have to eat it as fast. But this is not good for us. This is not good for anyone. And the fact that we are choosing to eat this, I know I grew up on frozen, over-processed foods because we just didn't know. And I had a mom that was tired and overrun, and she needed to get food out on the table fast, as well as do a million other things. So convenience was one of the biggest call-outs for ultra-processed foods. Foods that are going to be filled with dyes and fake products to help them keep that longer shelf life. They give that umami taste that you can't even compare it to in anywhere else. Think about any sweet foods, any of your candies or desserts are so delicious and taste so amazing, but really no food should be sweeter than fresh fruits that we get from our garden. And no longer is that tart blueberry taste something that individuals yearn for, because there's too much of a difference between one blueberry and another that it's not always going to be that one taste. When you eat a candy, a Swedish fish, for example, the taste is always the same. You know it's going to be that taste, where fruit can be different depending on its ripeness or the variety that you're choosing from. And that's why kids and adults don't like fruit, because you never know what you're going to get. But we really should be thriving and striving to grow our families with fresh fruits and fresh vegetables so that they have that nutrients that we were made to have from the beginning. Some other things that are happening to our food industry outside of these ultra processed foods, which are definitely something that we're trying to stay away from in our house. We're trying to really step back and go to whole foods, whole healthy foods. It's definitely really hard, but growing your own foods, making your own foods, and sticking to the outer aisles in a supermarket is really something that I've been trying to keep in mind when I do create meals and snacks for my family. But taking a step back and thinking about what's going on in our food industry, so we have our ultra processed foods. We have Bill Gates, who's trying to push eating crickets, which, if you listen to a lot of studies on crickets, it is found that they can carry many different diseases and probably isn't the best. I know that bugs can be highly nutritious, and I'm not against eating bugs and foraging for anything in the woods, but that way that they're processing them and putting all of these crickets into small spaces and overproducing these amount of animals the same way they produce lots of meats in the food industry is not necessarily the best and safest practice. We definitely try to keep all of our meats something that we get at home, or choosing free range or ways that are more humane and safer and not pumped with antibiotics, because the effects cannot be safe for us. As well as this newfound studies around producing food from 3D printing, or only producing it in factories, so factory grown foods. Who even knows what that really means? I've been seeing so many different reels and YouTube shorts around people at Whole Foods and Costco saying that their meats look like they're 3D printed, and the fact that our government could be giving us foods that are 3D printed without telling us, and they're not actually from animals, actually blows my mind. And I really hope that that is not happening, because not everyone is going to be able to grow and get their own meat or their own high quality meat, because it is very expensive, and this definitely does stem into different levels of affordability and what people can get. And there's even people in food deserts, areas that do not even have a supermarket but are only able to get from gas stations and convenience stores. So they're really landlocked into these places where they can't even get good food, which is a whole other different story. And I hope that those individuals are able to really farm and get their own foods that they can grow, but we really do not know. The impact of these ultra processed foods and just general production of food today is going to impact so much of our mental and physical health, and I think it is already affecting a lot of us today. America has so many individuals prescribed to depression medicine. We are plagued with diabetes, which is one of the biggest killers of individuals today, and this is something that I've been looking into for years. And diabetes is the leading cause for many other diseases that are not only diabetes, but you can get into obesity, you can get into Alzheimer's, which is basically a type of diabetes or caused by diabetes. And these are just growing sicknesses that we're getting in our country. I think my first introduction into this over-processed food and what it can do to you was really that throwback movie Super Size Me, which I think a lot of people have seen, and that was just the beginning of opening up around processed foods and what they can do to you and how they can make individuals fat, sick, and unhealthy. And I really think that it's not just McDonald's, it's not just Burger King and fast foods. This over-processed food this ultra-processed food is really affecting us in grocery stores, in fine dining, with some of the seed oils that they're producing our food in. Chick-fil-A is known as one of the better fast food places, and they still do not use the best oils when cooking. And that is just one of the many spots that is definitely thinking about how they can lower their costs in order to serve food. So cooking at home with your own ingredients that you know exactly what you're putting into it is going to be the best way to actually understand what you're putting into your bodies and making sure that you're reading labels. Because some of the backs of those food things, if you don't look at the labels, you'll never know, because there's so much fake green marketing around what is actually in your food. And when you actually turn that label around and you start to read about it, you start to understand exactly what's going into your food, or not exactly, because a lot of the words are really large and don't even make sense. I listened to something the other day that said that they're already putting crickets into our food. They've just named it something different, and I'll put the name of what it is right here. But how would you even know that you're getting this product in your food if you didn't know that we had a secret name for crickets that we're putting in our food? This is insane, and we're being lied to in so many different ways and deceived by the food industry. And this honestly needs to stop, and homesteading is definitely the best way to get out of this and to stop it, because you're going to be able to produce your own food and fight back to a system that wants you to eat these ultra processed foods and wants you to eat these foods made in a lab that are going to be causing you to get very sick. And there are so many different things and so many health issues that are coming out because of these ultra processed foods. Eating these foods is going to lead to a multitude of unhealthy habits and an unhealthy society. First off, you're going to have nutritional deficiencies. These foods are high in calories, high in fats, but they're missing out on the important fibers, minerals, and nutrients that we need in our diet. Even when consuming the adequate amount of calories, you still need to make sure that you're having certain types of food in that to sustain your health. And by eating these empty calories, it's going to lead to obesities and nutrient deficiencies. When you're eating all of this food, you can see that our country has become more overweight, more obese. And because of this obesity, it's leading to diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and overall an unhealthy society that diabetes is then leading to other sicknesses like Alzheimer's. Like with that overweight, you have bad knees, bad back, and you could have mental depression because you're overweight. There's just so many things that it can lead into and goes from there. But starting off with the food that you eat is the most important thing that you can do to your overall mental and physical health. Gut health is really at risk. Eating these ultra processed foods can really wreak havoc on the gut microbiome, which is uber important in your overall health. We hear a lot of people talking about gut health, doing gut cleanses, and really all you need to do is go back a step, go back to the basics, eat your whole healthy foods that we can get from our garden, that we can get from raising animals in a sustainable, healthy fashion, free-ranging our animals, and getting a clean source of meat. And a lot of these ultra-processed foods there's a lot of research around the fact that a lot of the additives that are going into these foods are wreaking havoc on our mental brains as well, causing a huge amount of depression in our society. And you can see this by the amount of medicine that we've been prescribing, the amount of depression medicines we've been prescribing, as well as probably some of the drug addictions that we've been seeing, and the influx of drug addictions and drugs just taking over societies and cities and creating zombie lands in different areas. And a lot of this can be given back to the foods that we're eaten and raised on. I know that we're taking a big step in our lives to really go back to the basics. We have been for the past couple of years, and the more that you can do to keep on learning and keep on growing your own food, getting things from farmers markets, from local markets, getting them from places that are growing their foods in an efficient way, and making sure that you're really looking into the labels and what's being put into your food is going to be the number one way that you can understand if your food is good or bad to eat. I suggest looking at the list that I'm going to attach below on some of the biggest ultra-processed foods. Hint, hint, things like hot dogs are not the best thing to be eating. And there's a lot of other better foods that you can be adding to your diet to take in the appropriate amount of calories and to grow a happy and healthy body and mind. So I really hope that you stick along for our journey of homesteading. You help change your life to create less of a society that's going to be eating ultra-processed foods. You grow a family that's going to eat healthier and not get stuck into this rut of getting sick and unhealthy and down bad paths. This is a state of emergency, what our country is going through, what our world is going through in food production, and this is the time to make a change. So I hope you are. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and keep harvesting the foods in my garden. I know my dogs are getting a little excited, but I hope this rant was good. I'd love to hear any of your feelings, any of your thoughts, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.